Patricia Heaton, who everyone loved as Deborah Barron, has finally talked about the show that made her famous, but also made things really hard for her behind the scenes. You thought Everybody Loves Raymond was all fun and laughs. Think again. There was fighting, secrets, personal problems, and hidden truths that never made it on TV. What really happened between Heaton and the other actors? Did being successful cost her something personal? And what secret did she hide the whole time they were filming? This is the story Patricia Heaton is finally ready to tell, with real stories, inside notes from making the show, and moments never told before. We're looking behind the laugh track to show what was really happening. Get ready, the truth changes everything. Asterisk asterisk, the set everyone wanted to be part of asterisk asterisk. When most people think of Everybody Loves Raymond, they remember the fighting in-laws, the funny one-liners, and the cozy feeling of a regular home where crazy things always happened near the kitchen table. But what happened behind those scenes was just as exciting as anything the cameras filmed. The set of Everybody Loves Raymond wasn't like most comedy shows. It was a place where people clashed, kept secrets, and had unexpected emotional moments. To start with, the actors had a special way of working together. While Ray Romano often played the nervous husband on TV, behind the scenes, he was super focused on making the story perfect. As someone who helped create the show, he worked closely with the main writer Phil Rosenthal to use real family fights for their stories. Many scenes that fans laughed at were actually taken directly from real arguments Phil had with his wife, Monica. This meant that practice wasn't just about learning lines. They were going through real emotional stuff, which made their acting feel so real. Patricia Heaton, who played Deborah, was dealing with more than just her character's stress. What viewers didn't know was that she was pregnant during the show. Since her pregnancies didn't match Deborah's story, the people making the show worked really hard to keep her condition hidden from audiences. Brad Garrett was one of the funniest actors on the show and had one of the most questionable behind-the-scenes secrets. At the beginning of this show, he quietly fought with alcohol addiction. He would later admit that he was what many called a high-functioning alcoholic, which meant that he hid this problem from almost everyone on the set. He would often go on stage after drinking alcohol, trusting his skills as a performer to get him through, but even the best timing couldn't hide the inner struggles he was fighting. Luckily, he decided to face those problems early in the show's life, and getting sober only added another layer of personal victory to all of his Emmy-winning performances. The practice process itself was harder than most people think. Mondays were for reading scripts. Lots of changes came from how the actors and producers reacted, and Tuesdays and Wednesdays were practice days, while Thursdays were for planning camera shots. Finally, Friday would come, the real thing, filmed in front of an audience. Those days were filled with long hours of pressure work, especially for Heaton and Garrett, who had to switch their performances from serious to funny in just a moment. Sometimes the laughter from the audience became the energy that helped the actors get through tiredness and backstage tension. And then there were those emotional moments that no one could have predicted. Heaton made it through practice for the last episode before breaking down. It was just too much to hold in after a 9-year run. Her tears delayed the filming until she could get her voice back. An unplanned problem that showed just how connected the actors were with the world they had created together. It was also the moment the world saw Patricia Heaton not just as a supporting player, but as the emotional heart of the show. Asterisk asterisk, the rise of a star who didn't want fame asterisk asterisk, Patricia Heaton never planned to become the queen of primetime television. Long before she lit up living rooms as the sharp-tongued Deborah Barron, she was just another struggling actress in Los Angeles, going to auditions, getting rejected, and raising a family. Fame was never guaranteed. In fact, for most of her early career, it felt impossible to reach. But something about Everybody Loves Raymond changed everything, and Heaton found herself reluctantly rising into the spotlight. Before getting the role that would define her career, Patricia Heaton had already gone through years of uncertainty. She had small roles in sitcoms and even appeared on 30-something, but nothing seemed to work out. By the time the Raymond pilot came along, Heaton was a working mom with children and bills. not someone with time to chase fame. Yet her chemistry with Ray Romano during auditions was obvious. She wasn't just reading lines, she was matching him beat for beat, balancing his nervous charm with a dry sense of humor that felt natural. Still, getting the role wasn't guaranteed. CBS initially had someone else in mind, Maggie Wheeler, who many fans know as Janice from Friends. Wheeler auditioned for the part of Deborah and was a serious choice, but producers ultimately decided she wasn't the right fit. Heaton's mix of motherly warmth and sharp sarcasm won them over. It was the perfect blend for a character who would have to survive a pushy mother-in-law, a clueless husband, and frequent chaos from her in-laws. When the cameras finally began to roll, Heaton was focused on the character and was not trying to become famous. She would tell everyone that she was more interested in giving real performances than making herself a brand. At times, she found fame uncomfortable. She didn't play the Hollywood game by posing for photographers or chasing the spotlight. Work, writing, and being true to herself on and off screen were what mattered most to her. Even though she wasn't under pressure in the celebrity way, the awards certainly came. Heaton was nominated for Emmy Awards every year from 1999 through 2005 for her performance throughout the 9 seasons. She won the award twice. While many would have used the recognition to fight for bigger roles or magazine covers, she took a quieter path instead. But it wasn't always easy. Fame led to people watching her closely. Heaton's conservative views often clashed with her fellow actors and with Hollywood's usual liberal thinking. She has said that there were moments of tension with Peter Boyle, who played Frank Barone. While they had deep respect for each other, the two didn't always agree. However, as true Raymond actors, that's where the humor came in, and they could gently tease each other instead of having bitter arguments. When Boyle died in 2006, Heaton honored him publicly, which proved their relationship went beyond just politics. Heaton remained the steady force on that set through it all. She gave stability to a show that often used real life, marriage frustrations, and all the weird parts of family life. Deborah felt real when Heaton got angry at Ray's behavior, only to melt into calm warmth. And when tensions behind the scenes began to rise over money and creative control, Patricia would find herself in the middle of a storm she never asked for, one that would test her loyalty and her limits. What happened next would reveal even more about the quiet strength behind the reluctant star. Heaton's hidden battle at the height of Everybody Loves Raymond's success. The laughter on screen hid the personal battles happening behind the scenes, none more quietly devastating than the one Patricia Heaton faced. Audiences saw her as the calm, clever Deborah Barone, always ready with a sarcastic comeback, but few knew that while she was giving Emmy-winning performances, her personal life was falling into chaos. The fall she experienced wasn't physical, it was emotional, spiritual, and deeply personal. For years, Heaton seemed stable, a loving mother, a disciplined actress, and a seemingly grounded person in the Hollywood world. The pressures of balancing motherhood, marriage, and a demanding television schedule left her overwhelmed. Late nights on set and the lonely nature of fame made the stress worse, and alcohol offered a fake escape. It didn't spiral in public. She was what some might call high-functioning. No arrests, no headlines, no outbursts, but inside, she felt like she was losing control. The weight of pretending everything was fine became unbearable. And while no scandal ever happened around her, those closest to Heaton noticed the cracks. It wasn't just about drinking. It was about numbing feelings, hiding, and avoiding. The difference between her poised television personality and her private turmoil became harder to manage with each passing season. It was with this quiet acceptance that she reached turning point after turning point for herself. Patricia Heaton decided she would become sober. It was not for any camera, not for any publicity, but for her children, for her health, for her sanity. So she began going to meetings, building a support system for herself, and beginning to face all the feelings she'd been avoiding. This was a deeply private thing for her, but it did change how she viewed her own life. how she lived her life, and how she worked. They bonded in their silent suffering. They never talked about details of their lives together, but clearly, as time passed, many of the Raymond actors found themselves dealing with personal challenges amid the laughter. It was this very humanity that the audience could never truly see but felt in their gut. The realness felt by the audience was, at least partially, because the actors were drawing from real-life experiences. According to Phil Rosenthal, the show's creator, many episodes began as actual arguments or feelings from his life. Not only the writers, but the actors too got inspiration from real events. For Heaton, any scene where Deborah showed frustration, exhaustion, or vulnerability presented itself as a way to express deeper feelings. Acting was healing for her, which probably made her more believable among her colleagues in the industry, and what happened behind those studio walls, especially in the show's final years, would challenge everything the cast thought they knew about each other. The secret struggles behind the smile as Everybody Loves Raymond approached its final seasons. The tension behind the scenes was growing thicker than ever. On the surface, the show was still a ratings giant. Millions tuned in weekly to watch the Barron family navigate another awkward dinner or passive-aggressive confrontation. But backstage, the relationships were changing, and not all the actors were on the same page. What began as light-hearted joking started turning into friction that some say nearly derailed the show's graceful exit. At the heart of the tension was a growing divide in pay and recognition. Ray Romano had become the highest-paid actor on television, reportedly earning $8 million per episode by 2003. While his talent and role as co-creator justified the increase, the gap between him and his co-stars was huge. Brad Garrett, a fan favorite and Emmy winner for his portrayal of Robert, was earning a fraction of that, around $160,000 per episode. It wasn't just about money, it was a matter of respect. Garrett's frustration boiled over. He walked off the show, temporarily, yes, but it sent shockwaves through the cast and crew. Patricia Heaton, always known for her professionalism, reportedly supported Garrett's decision. Other actors joined the protest quietly, unwilling to continue working until a fair solution was reached. Behind the scenes, negotiations were tense. CBS executives scrambled to find a solution before the fallout could damage the show's image. After several weeks, the cast reached new agreements and returned, but the wounds had been made. Though the smiles returned to the screen, those last seasons carried an undercurrent. The friendship that once defined the Raymond set had changed. The long hours, the constant pressure to deliver perfect episodes, and the approaching end of the series made everyone more guarded. Even Phil Rosenthal, the show's creator, admitted that by the 9th season, the writing team was exhausted. He famously joked that they'd need to get into fights with their own spouses just to create fresh material. The show was running on creative fumes, and the emotional toll was real. In contrast, Patricia Heaton had something totally different to deal with, the emotional heaviness of closure. 9 years of playing Deborah Barron were nearing an end. Deborah was sharply witty and emotionally deep, but for Heaton, her character went beyond the role. She was Heaton's battles, wins, and growth. As the last season approached, emotions began to swell. By the last practice of the last episode, there was no turning back. The actress cried so much that she lost her voice. Filming had to be postponed from in front of a live audience. That was one thing, to say goodbye to a job. More, it would have been the release of 9 years' worth of stress, love, fear, and healing. Heaton has since said more. It was here that television offered much more than a professional job and a good living. However, stability in an otherwise shaky personal environment, meaning at a time when she felt her identity was being scattered, and above all, family, where it was dysfunctional, complicated, and true to real life, the weight of that goodbye was felt by the rest of the cast. Doris Roberts would say that she never worked with such a dedicated cast. Peter Boyle, playing Frank, kept quiet about his diagnosis with cancer in the final years of the show, sharing the information only with Roberts and a few producers. He did not want pity. He did not want special treatment. He wanted to finish strong. With that knowledge, the last episodes take on a new depth. His humor masked the terrible pain he carried when the cameras were off. After the show ended, rumors were thrown around about a possible Robert spin-off and even hints about a cast reunion. But nothing of the sort ever happened. The cast had been through too much. In a lot of ways, the chapter was closed just as it was meant to be. Heaton went off to do the middle, Romano took on serious roles, and Garrett returned to stand-up comedy. They were each on their own paths, but what happened during those final seasons stayed with them. Still, the secrets of Everybody Loves Raymond weren't all about tension or trouble. There were lighter stories, hidden pregnancies, real life Easter eggs, and private moments that revealed just how cleverly the cast and crew protected their own. And it was one of Patricia Heaton's personal secrets that stayed hidden the longest, until she finally revealed the truth. Motherhood in the margins, when audiences tuned into Everybody Loves Raymond, they saw Patricia Heaton as the unflinching, sharp-tongued Deborah Barron, juggling a chaotic household, meddling in laws, and a husband who often acted like a fourth child. But behind those perfectly timed one-liners and frustrated sighs was a surprising secret that viewers never noticed. Patricia Heaton was pregnant not once, but twice during the show's run, and the production team pulled off an incredible feat by hiding it in plain sight. During filming, Heaton was already a mother of 3. She hadn't planned for more children during such a demanding time in her career, but life had other plans. When she became pregnant during the series, producers faced a choice: write the pregnancy into the show or find a way to keep it off screen. The character of Deborah wasn't written to have additional kids beyond the 3 she already had with Ray. Changing that would mess up the carefully crafted family dynamic central to the show's success. So, the team decided to keep Heaton's pregnancies out of the storyline altogether, and that decision led to some of the most creative staging in sitcom history. Camera crews began using clever tricks to hide Heaton's growing baby bump. She was often placed behind kitchen counters, large furniture, or carefully positioned props like laundry baskets and oversized handbags. Wardrobe changed, too. Deborah's typically fitted outfits were replaced with looser, layered clothing designed to hide her changing figure. Even blocking, the way scenes are physically staged, was reworked. Heaton was guided to sit more often, or positioned so that another character could partially block her from the camera. All these efforts were so built into the routine that most audiences had no idea what was going on. No rumors, no headlines, and no awkward shifts in storylines, a testimony to the work behind the scenes of all involved, from the director to the costume department to Heaton herself, who kept hitting that same mark, the emotional ranges and intensity that fans were used to from her. It's a stressful task. Hiding a pregnancy in front of a live audience on a multi-camera sitcom added a level of pressure that Heaton didn't expect. She once confessed in interviews that her character was performed at that time with complete concentration and endurance, hiding everything: the morning sickness, tiredness, and emotional ride of pregnancy while filming high-energy scenes with tight comedic timing. What was even more amazing was that it was not the tabloids who had left the original studio audience, nor any of the die-hard fans who caught on to the televised show. Only years later would Heaton openly confirm what she went through and how she managed to strike an incredible balance between the two worlds. And thus, she won new respect from colleagues and fans, not just as an excellent actress, but also as a working mom who kept showing up, giving her all, and protecting her privacy without ever asking for special treatment. Her ability to separate real-life motherhood from the character she played added depth to Deborah's authenticity. Although Deborah wasn't written to be pregnant, every moment of the scene was informed by Heaton's off-screen experience as a mother. That subtle depth is part of what gave the character such lasting power. Viewers could feel that there was real weight behind her frustrations and her warmth, without totally knowing the whole story. But that wasn't the only part of Patricia Heaton's life that was carefully hidden. Just a few years after the show wrapped, a surprising legal battle put her name back in the headlines, and it revealed a different side of the actress, one that had nothing to do with scripted lines or sitcom laughs. The lawsuit that shook her image just when it seemed like Patricia Heaton had mastered the balance between stardom and private life. A surprising headline shook that carefully maintained image. In 2009, 4 years after Everybody Loves Raymond ended, Heaton found herself at the center of a legal dispute that raised uncomfortable questions, not about her performances or public politics, but about how she treated those closest to her behind the scenes. The lawsuit was filed by Jennifer Lee, Heaton's former personal assistant. Lee claimed that she was not properly paid for the hours she worked, claiming unpaid wages that totaled only $742. It wasn't the amount that grabbed attention, it was the principle. In California, labor laws are strict, especially when it comes to hourly employees working overtime. And the claim that a Hollywood star had violated those rules, even unintentionally, turned a relatively small dispute into a public spectacle. According to the filing, Lee said she had worked long hours beyond what was agreed upon, often being asked to complete tasks that stretched far into evenings and weekends. She claimed she wasn't given breaks or paid overtime, and the pay she did receive didn't reflect the hours she had actually worked. The case, while modest in scope, hit a nerve because it challenged the public's perception of Heaton as a fair, grounded, and morally upright person. Heaton's team declined to speak much on the matter, choosing instead to let the legal process unfold quietly. But in Hollywood, even silence becomes its own kind of story. Speculation began to swirl. Was this simply a paperwork mistake, or a symptom of a deeper issue in how stars manage their personal staff? Some industry insiders defended Heaton, calling her professional and respectful, while others acknowledged that mismanagement between talent and their private employees happens more often than the public realizes, especially in a world where personal assistants often blur the line between professional and personal support. What made the moment more jarring for fans was that Heaton had spent years publicly advocating for conservative, principles-based causes. She spoke often about faith, family, and personal responsibility. For some, the suit felt like a contradiction with all those values that she so proudly projected. Others saw it as a reminder that even celebrities who appear polished and principled were just human, fallible, and flawed like anyone else. There is no record of the lawsuit becoming a long, drawn-out court case. It settled as it usually does, quietly away from the prying eyes of the media and out of the public consciousness. But for Heaton, it is a cautionary tale. Celebrity status is in no way immune to labor laws, nor do employees who work increasingly under private cover necessarily operate with the kind of immunity if something goes wrong. The legal system of California ensures that even household staff will be able to seek help if they feel that they have been wronged, no matter the status of the employer involved. This lawsuit also changed the public's perception of Patricia Heaton. Up to that point, she was a mostly sarcastic and beloved TV mom and a conservative voice in Hollywood who stood against the prevailing liberal way of thinking. But all of a sudden, those who watched would remember that Heaton's life had real tensions, power dynamics, and personal conflicts that would never be seen in a sitcom script, just as there are in the life of her character Deborah. Quite a contrast with the poised personality that managed to keep 2 pregnancies secret while her hit show ran. No props would be used to help mask this truth. The lawsuit did little to hurt Heaton's career. After the court battle, she returned to television, most notably as Frankie Heck on The Middle, which almost seemed to celebrate the great actress every failing as a mother. Television viewers continued to tune in, seemingly willing to separate the performer from the controversy. Good for her, it did not help define her public personality or change any of the work she was doing. But this time, it wasn't legal drama or pregnancy rumors. It was something even more vulnerable, her journey toward healing from a private, lifelong struggle. Asterisk asterisk legacy, rumors, and one last message asterisk asterisk Patricia Heaton had long been viewed as a woman who had it all together, an Emmy-winning actress, a devoted wife and mother, and a rare conservative voice in a famously liberal industry. But in 2020, well after Everybody Loves Raymond had ended and her follow-up sitcom The Middle had run its course, Heaton made a startlingly personal confession. She had battled a hidden dependency on alcohol for years, and almost no one saw it coming. In an honest interview and a string of Instagram posts, Heaton opened up about her decision to give up alcohol after realizing that her drinking had quietly begun to take control of her life. For years, she said, it had been a background habit. Wine at social events, cocktails to unwind, and the occasional glass to celebrate a long day's work. But at some point, the occasional drink became routine. Then it became necessary. Eventually, it became a problem. She described one turning point during a dinner party. She had poured herself her usual, and suddenly wondered if the alcohol was doing more harm than good. It wasn't a dramatic crash or an intervention scene. It was a quiet realization that her health, focus, and clarity were slipping away. She wasn't the life of the party anymore. She was someone struggling to stay in control. And it scared her. For Heaton, who grew up in a religious Catholic household and often publicly championed moral clarity, this internal conflict was especially difficult to confront. Alcohol had become a way to manage stress, to navigate the emotional weight of Hollywood, motherhood, and middle age, but it also clashed with her self-image. She knew that if she didn't stop, she would slowly become someone she no longer recognized. So she quit, just like that. The decision to go sober wasn't made for a headline, a role, or a career move. It was deeply personal, and for the most part, it remained private until she was more than 2 years sober. Only then did she begin to share her experience publicly, partly as a way to hold herself accountable, and partly to offer encouragement to others who might be quietly battling the same demon. "I miss the buzz," she admitted in one post, "but I don't miss the noise in my head the next morning." Her honesty was refreshing in a world where celebrity confessions often feel planned or fake. Heaton didn't paint herself as a victim or try to frame her sobriety as heroic. Instead, she spoke plainly. Drinking had stopped being fun. It had started to steal her peace, and once she realized that, she knew she had to walk away from it. The impact of the timing of her confession was almost greater than the confession itself. In her 60s, Heaton belonged to an age group not usually thought of with sobriety movements. Yet studies have shown that women aged 50 plus are drinking heavier than ever, often as a way to escape feelings of loneliness or anxiety and emotional distress brought on by aging. In speaking out, Heaton unwittingly threw her hat in the ring, with a growing number of women choosing clarity over bitter numbness, in some cases in defiance of what the world expected from them, that they ought to be silent. It also shed light on her earlier dramas. Fans were looking at earlier press reports with a new perspective on her close bond with co-star Peter Boyle, who was there for her during the toughest times, or with the assistant lawsuit and its hints of more deep-rooted personal troubles. As such, it became clear that Heaton's outwardly pristine public image could have hidden a mess of complicated, very human turmoil of her own. Interestingly, sobriety even influenced how she approached her later characters. For Carol's second act, Heaton played a retired teacher who started a new career in medicine, a character mirroring Heaton's own reinvention in life. Her performance was grounded, her calmness and self-awareness present, perhaps for the first time for many of her fans and critics to notice. And she would encourage others. She sometimes tweeted about how sobriety was not a matter of shame, but of freedom. "You can always start again. Today can be day one," she wrote. Those few words were a signal to thousands of followers, many of whom may have been quietly dealing with the same questions about their own habits and health. In the end, Patricia Heaton's revelation didn't weaken her legacy. Instead, it strengthened it. It made the woman even more relatable, from strength to vulnerability. Everybody Loves Raymond may have seemed like the perfect sitcom, but behind those closed barron doors were real, life stories that changed the people involved forever. What surprised you most about Heaton's behind-the-scenes experience? Do you think the show could have survived in today's Hollywood climate? Let us know in the comments. And if you love deep dives into the untold stories of your favorite stars, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss a reveal. And keep watching. The next video on your screen takes you even deeper into the Hollywood truths no one expected.